What if the most important person in your life was someone you looked at every day, but never truly saw? We're often told that to get ahead, you have to be loud, be aggressive, be seen. But what if that's all wrong? What if the greatest power, the purest form of heroism, is hidden in plain sight, in the quiet dignity of someone just trying to get by? This is a story that challenges everything we think we know about value, power, and who the real heroes are. It's the story of Landon Wood, a ruthless CEO living at the top of the world, and Hazel Baker, a dedicated single mom working tirelessly as his assistant, living in his shadow. For him, she was just a part of the office furniture. For her, he was a demanding boss who held the key to her son's future. They were two worlds apart until one fateful day when everything changed. This is the unbelievable story of how a single mom assistant saves her CEO's life, an event that triggers a chain reaction of lies, secrets, and a shocking revelation. We're going to show you what happened when this powerful man, who thought he had it all, was left completely speechless when he found out the truth. He didn't just find out who his true savior was, he uncovered a cruel deception designed to keep her hidden, and a quiet strength that would redefine his entire world. This is a story about injustice, redemption, and a love that grows from the most unexpected act of kindness. Before we dive into this incredible journey, let us know in the comments what beautiful city or town you're watching from. We'd love to imagine the scenery with you and see how far our story has reached. Also, please take a moment to like this video so we know you enjoy stories like this. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss what's next. And please share this with someone who you think will be truly touched by this story. You've got to understand, in the grand theater of life, sometimes destiny writes a plot twist so unbelievable it leaves you utterly, completely speechless. Picture this: a powerful CEO, a man who moves markets with a single command, suddenly finds himself on the brink of oblivion, his life hanging by a thread. He's the very picture of control, yet in that moment, he was just a fragile man. And it's in that instant of pure vulnerability that the unexpected happens, an act that would forever change his path. Who would have guessed that salvation would come from the last place he'd look? Not from his high-powered partners or his wealthy family, but from a quiet figure who walked the halls of his own office. A single mom, his dedicated assistant, who without a shred of hesitation, acts with a stunning clarity. She simply saves life with a competence that defied her job title. It was one of those rare, heart-aching moments of pure, unadulterated courage that came out of nowhere. After the chaos, in the sterile quiet of a hospital room, the CEO, Landon Wood, tries to piece the puzzle together. The story he's being told makes sense on the surface, but something deep inside whispers that there's a secret being kept. He feels gratitude, of course, but the feeling seems to float without a face to land on. The truth of that fateful afternoon felt shrouded in a fog, leaving him with a sense of debt to a shadow, a ghost he couldn't name. What he doesn't know yet is that the truth is a far more emotional story than he could ever imagine. It isn't just about a well-executed first aid procedure, it's about an act of profound kindness, of a humanity he, in his ivory tower, hadn't encountered in a long, long time. The truth about his anonymous hero is a secret that, once revealed, has the power to shatter his entire world. He thought he had seen it all, but a monumental surprise was waiting for him. The irony is almost poetic, isn't it? The man with access to all the world's information, who could predict market trends and uncover corporate secrets, was blind to the single most important truth of his life. The reality of what happened held a plot twist worthy of a movie, waiting patiently in the wings. He was about to discover that the greatest asset he ever had wasn't listed on any of his financial statements. This journey would force him to reevaluate everything he thought he knew about power, loyalty, and the human character. He would be confronted with the truth about his assistant, the quiet single mom named Hazel Baker, and that single revelation would leave him absolutely speechless. The path to uncovering this secret was just beginning, and the first step, unbeknownst to him, was to truly see the person he looked at every day but had never truly seen before. Now let's talk about Hazel Baker. She was the very definition of resilience, a devoted single mom whose world revolved around two things: her young son and her job. Working as an assistant for a man like Landon Wood wasn't just a job, it was a tightrope walk over a canyon of expectations and pressure. Yet, she handled it with a quiet grace that was almost invisible to the corporate world around her. Her days were a blur of schedules, reports, and endless cups of coffee for her boss. Landon Wood, the formidable CEO, was a man carved from ambition and success. His world was one of numbers, of profit margins and hostile takeovers. He was distant, demanding, and notoriously hard to please, a force of nature in a tailored suit. For him, employees were cogs in a machine, and he expected them to function with flawless, unemotional precision. He barely registered the woman who managed his chaotic professional life, the one who ensured his days ran smoothly. Hazel's dedication was a silent, constant force. It was in the way she anticipated Landon's needs before he even voiced them, the way she handled frantic calls with unwavering calm, and the way she stayed late to finalize presentations, all while knowing her son was waiting. This wasn't just about earning a paycheck, it was about a deep-seated professional pride and a powerful sense of responsibility. Her work was an act of service, rooted in a profound kindness she extended to everyone. She was the steady hand in the storm of his corporate empire, the calm in the eye of the hurricane. While Landon was making deals that would shape the industry, Hazel was the one ensuring he had the right documents, at the right time, in the right city. She was the architect of his efficiency, a crucial part of his success, yet she remained firmly in the background. Her life story, a heart-aching tale of sacrifice and love, was a secret she kept locked away. She never complained, not once. The long hours, the last-minute demands, the sheer impersonality of it all took it in stride. For Hazel, this job was her fortress, the stable ground that allowed her to provide for her child. Her role as a single mom fueled her tireless work ethic. She wasn't just working for a CEO, she was building a future, brick by painstaking brick, for the little boy who called her mom. And so the dynamic was set: the powerful, oblivious CEO and his indispensable, invisible assistant. They were two people, living in completely different worlds, sharing the same office space, but separated by a chasm of status and awareness. He never saw the struggle, the strength, or the incredible woman right in front of him. But destiny had a funny way of forcing people to open their eyes, often in the most dramatic way possible. Landon Wood lived his life at 100 miles an hour. Consumed by the relentless pursuit of growth and power, his focus was always on the next deal, the next quarter, the next conquest. The people around him were resources, instruments to achieve his goals. He saw their functions, not their faces, their output, not their souls. Hazel Baker, his assistant, was in his mind the Hazel Baker epitome of efficiency, but that's where his perception ended. He simply didn't see the person behind the title. It wasn't intentional malice, you see. It was a kind of profound blindness, a side effect of his immense success. He'd often overlook her sharp intelligence, the insightful comments she'd make under her breath, or the brilliant solutions she'd propose that he'd later adopt without realizing their origin. To him, she was just another employee, easily replaceable, a part of the office furniture. This constant dismissal was a quiet way she was humiliated daily, though she never showed it. He never once asked about her life outside the office walls. The fact that she was a single mom was a footnote in her HR file, a detail he might have scanned once and immediately forgotten. He couldn't have fathomed the strength it took for her to juggle a demanding career and a child, the late nights and early mornings, the constant worry. This entire emotional part of her existence was a universe he didn't know existed, and frankly, didn't care to explore. There were moments, little glimmers, where he could have seen. A time she solved a complex logistical nightmare that had stumped his entire executive team, for instance. He praised the outcome, but never bothered to find out who was responsible. He just assumed one of his VPs handled it. Her brilliance was a secret hidden in plain sight, a talent he was blind to. It was a missed opportunity, a connection he unknowingly severed before it could even form. This blindness wasn't just reserved for Hazel, it was his default setting. But with her, it was more pronounced because she was so close, so integral to his daily operations. He saw the work, but not the woman. He benefited from her kindness and efficiency every single day, yet he failed to acknowledge the source. This dynamic, the powerful CEO and his overlooked assistant, was a story as old as time, but a plot twist was on the horizon. And so, he continued on, blissfully unaware. He saw a competent assistant, not a potential savior. He saw a subordinate, not a woman of incredible integrity. He dismissed her as ordinary, never realizing that the most extraordinary person he would ever meet was the one bringing him his morning coffee. He was about to learn a very harsh lesson that true value isn't always loud, and sometimes the greatest strength is found in the quietest corners. The event was the crown jewel of the corporate calendar, a high-stakes gala designed to celebrate a massive merger. The air buzzed with energy, champagne flowed freely, and the biggest names in the industry were all there. Landon Wood, the masterful CEO, was at the center of it all, delivering a powerful speech. He was at the absolute peak of his power, a king in his castle, orchestrating his empire's next grand move. Everything was perfect, almost too perfect. Then, in an instant, the world tilted on its axis. In the middle of a sentence, Landon faltered. His hand went to his chest, his face contorted in a mask of pain and confusion, and a gasp rippled through the stunned audience. The invincible Landon Wood, the man who seemed immune to weakness, collapsed right there on the stage. Chaos erupted. The symphony of clinking glasses and polite chatter turned into a cacophony of screams and panicked shouts. His life was suddenly in grave danger. The man who controlled everything was now utterly powerless, his fate hanging precariously in the balance. His security team rushed forward. His partners and executives stood frozen, their faces pale with shock and fear. It was a terrifying scene. The corporate titan, so full of life just moments before, now frighteningly still on the floor. All the power and money in the world were useless in that moment. This wasn't just a medical emergency, it was a symbolic collapse. The entire event, a celebration of his strength, had become the stage for his ultimate vulnerability. For a few terrifying minutes, nobody knew what to do. The people he trusted, his top-tier team, were paralyzed by the sheer shock of the situation. They were deal-makers, strategists, not medics. Their skills were useless when their leader's heart was failing. The clock was ticking, every second critical. The surprise of the attack was absolute. No one had seen it coming. Landon was the picture of health, a man who prided himself on his discipline. But the human body doesn't care about quarterly reports or stock prices. In that moment of crisis, his life was on the line, and the first few minutes would determine everything. The scene was pure pandemonium, a testament to how quickly fortunes can change. This was the moment that would change everything, the unexpected catalyst for a story of redemption and revelation. While everyone else was caught in a wave of panic, one person in the crowd saw not a fallen CEO, but a human being in desperate need of help. A life needed to be saved, and destiny had placed one person in that room with the knowledge and composure to act. The stage was set for a hero to emerge from the most unlikely of places. As panic swept through the ballroom like a wildfire, Hazel Baker moved with a purpose that was chilling in its calm. While executives were fumbling for their phones and gasping in horror, she was already pushing her way through the stunned crowd. She wasn't seeing her demanding boss, the powerful CEO, on that stage. She saw life slipping away, and her instincts took over completely. There was no hesitation, no second thought, just pure, focused action. Her quick thinking was astonishing. She remembered her CPR and emergency response training, a certification she kept up to date just in case, a testament to her responsible nature as a single mom. It all came flooding back to her in a wave of crystal clarity. She dropped to her knees beside Landon, her voice steady as she instructed a stunned security guard to call for an ambulance and find the venue's defibrillator. She was a beacon of calm in a sea of chaos. She immediately began performing a life-saving intervention. Her movements were precise, confident, and efficient. It was a stark contrast to the helpless fear that had paralyzed everyone else in the room. This wasn't Hazel, the quiet assistant. This was Hazel, the protector, a woman of incredible strength and composure. She was literally breathing life back into the man who barely knew her name, her focus absolute and unwavering. This act was the ultimate testament to her character. It was pure, unselfish heroism, a moment of profound kindness in the face of death. She wasn't thinking about rewards or recognition, she was simply doing what needed to be done. She saves life with a humility that was as breathtaking as her courage. It was a heart-aching display of humanity that unfolded before a crowd of people who had never truly seen her before. When the paramedics finally arrived, they found a scene that was under control, all thanks to one woman. They were quick to say that her intervention had made all the difference, that the first few minutes were critical, and she had single-handedly kept him alive. She had given Landon Wood a fighting chance. It was a medical fact, an undeniable truth in the midst of the evening's emotional turmoil. And then, just as quickly as she had appeared, she faded back into the crowd. As the professionals took over, Hazel slipped away, her heart pounding but her job done. She didn't wait for thanks or acknowledgement. Her only concern was for her CEO's survival. She retreated to the shadows, leaving behind a man who was still alive because of her. The secret of her heroism known only to a few dazed onlookers, and soon to be completely buried. In the chaotic aftermath, as Landon was rushed to the hospital, a vacuum of information was created. And into that vacuum stepped Mark Atherton, an ambitious senior executive with a talent for self-promotion. Seeing an opportunity, he crafted a narrative that placed himself at the center of the heroism. He claimed it was his quick thinking, his leadership, that had saved the day. It was a bold and calculated lie, a stunning act of deceit. Mark, with his polished appearance and confident voice, was believable. He described the events with a flair for the dramatic, painting himself as the calm hero in the storm. Landon's family, frantic for good news and a hero to thank, clung to his story. They praised him endlessly, calling him a savior. Landon's colleagues and the board members followed suit, heaping accolades upon the man who had, in reality, stood frozen in fear. This was the beginning of a grand plot twist. The lie spread like gospel. The company's internal communications praised Mark's decisive action, and the story became fact. He became the man who saves life, the hero who stepped up when the great CEO fell. He soaked in the praise, his ego swelling with every word of thanks. It was a performance of a lifetime, and he played his part to perfection, all while knowing he had done nothing but watch. Meanwhile, Hazel Baker said nothing. She heard the whispers, she saw the emails praising Mark, and a quiet, sad part of her felt the sting of the injustice. But what could she do? She was just the assistant, a single mom who knew her word would mean nothing against a powerful executives. To speak up would seem like a desperate grab for attention, a fantasy. So she kept her secret, burying the truth under a layer of quiet dignity. Mark's deception was a cruel surprise. A betrayal not just of Landon, but of the very idea of heroism. He had stolen an act of pure kindness and twisted it into a tool for his own advancement. He saw Hazel's humility not as a virtue, but as a weakness to be exploited. He was confident his lie would hold, that the quiet little assistant would never dare to challenge him. He was building his career on her silence. And so, the stage was set for a deep and painful misunderstanding. The wrong person was being celebrated, while the true hero was being erased from the story. Landon Wood would recover, believing he owed his life to a man who was a fraud. This lie, this stolen moment of glory, would become a festering wound. In the heart of the company, a secret that destiny would eventually and dramatically bring into the light. The truth was just waiting for its moment. True to her nature, Hazel didn't utter a single word of protest. It wasn't in her DNA to seek the spotlight or to cause a scene. She watched as Mark Atherton became the office hero, accepting praise with a smug humility that made her stomach turn. Yet she remained silent. Her silence wasn't born of weakness, but of a profound and humble strength. She knew what she had done, and for her, that was enough. She was a single mom with bigger battles to fight. Her primary focus shifted entirely to Landon's recovery. From the sidelines, she became a quiet force of support. She coordinated with his doctors, managed the flood of messages from concerned clients, and ensured that absolutely nothing from the office would add to his stress. She continued to be the perfect assistant, her efficiency and dedication unwavering, even as the man she was protecting was completely unaware of the depth of her loyalty. She worked tirelessly, a ghost in the machine, ensuring the empire ran smoothly in its king's absence. This act, in itself, was a form of kindness, a way of protecting the CEO's legacy while he was at his most vulnerable. She deflected questions about the incident with a simple, "I'm just glad he's okay," never once hinting at her own pivotal role. Her humility was a shield, protecting her from the bitter taste of injustice. The secret of her heroism remained locked away in her heart. It was a heavy burden to carry, especially as she saw the undeserved praise being showered on Mark. It was a lonely feeling, knowing the truth that no one else seemed to see. But her integrity was not for sale, and her character wasn't defined by public opinion. This quiet, heart-aching resolve was the very core of who she was. She didn't need a parade. In a way, her silence was the most emotional part of the story. It spoke volumes about her character. While Mark was basking in false glory, Hazel was demonstrating what true loyalty looked like. She didn't need validation because her actions were not transactional. She did what was right because it was right, a simple and powerful philosophy that the corporate sharks around her could never comprehend. She simply continued her work. And so she watched and she waited, not for redemption, but for Landon's health to return. She was the silent guardian, the unsung hero focusing on the well-being of the man whose life she had saved. She had no idea that her quiet dignity and unwavering focus were about to be noticed by the one person who mattered most. Destiny was at work, and the truth has a funny way of refusing to stay buried forever. Lying in his hospital bed, Landon Wood had a lot of time to think. As the fog of medication and trauma began to lift, he replayed the events of that night over and over. In his mind, the official story, the one where Mark Atherton heroically saves life, was the one everyone told him. He thanked Mark, of course, as was expected. But a nagging, persistent feeling of doubt had taken root in his gut. Something just didn't add up. He started noticing inconsistencies. When he asked Mark for specific details, what he said, who he instructed Mark's answers were vague, slick, and polished, like a rehearsed speech. They lacked the raw, chaotic detail of a real emergency. Landon, a CEO whose career was built on reading people and spotting lies, felt his internal alarms beginning to sound. The hero's story felt hollow, like a well-constructed but empty facade. A strange thing began to happen. He felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, a deep, emotional wave of thanks. But it wasn't directed at Mark. It was a free-floating feeling, aimed at a faceless, nameless person. He had fragmented memories from his college, a calm voice, a steady pressure on his chest, a sense of order in the chaos. Those memories didn't match the panicked, self-aggrandizing persona of Mark Atherton. It was a profound surprise to his logical mind. This feeling was a secret he kept to himself. How could he voice his doubts? How could he question the man everyone, including his own family, was calling a hero? It would seem ungrateful, even paranoid. But the feeling was undeniable. He owed his life to someone, and his intuition screamed that it wasn't Mark. He felt a connection to an unknown savior, a debt he desperately wanted to repay to the right person. This internal conflict was the beginning of his own quiet investigation. As a powerful CEO, he wasn't used to being in the dark. The idea that the most important event of his life was shrouded in a lie was unacceptable. He needed the truth, not for retribution, but for understanding. He needed to know who that calm presence was, who had genuinely anchored him to life when he was drifting away. He didn't know it yet, but he was on the path to a major plot twist. His instincts were guiding him toward a truth that would be both shocking and deeply heartaching. His journey to redemption wasn't just about recovering his health, it was about uncovering a deception and finding the true source of the kindness that had saved him. The first clue, he would soon realize, was in the quiet efficiency of his own assistant. Back in the office, still recovering but determined to regain control, Landon started watching. His senses were heightened, his perception sharpened by his near-death experience. And his gaze, for the first time, fell squarely on his assistant, Hazel Baker. He began to observe her not as a function, but as a person. He noticed the small things, her unflappable calm under pressure, the quiet way she commanded respect without ever raising her voice. A minor workplace crisis erupted, a server crash that threatened a crucial project deadline. While executives panicked and the tech team scrambled, Hazel became the quiet center of the storm. She calmly coordinated communication, managed expectations with the client, and organized a workflow that kept the project moving forward on offline backups. She didn't just handle the crisis, she diffused it with a quiet, powerful efficiency that left Landon genuinely impressed. He saw in her an integrity that was rare and deeply compelling. She never took credit for others' work, but she also never shied away from responsibility. She was the embodiment of quiet competence, the exact opposite of Mark Atherton's loud, empty claims. Watching her was like discovering a secret that had been hidden in plain sight all along. He started to wonder what other depths she might have. This observation was the subtle beginning of their love story, though he would never have called it that. It was born of respect, of a deep and growing admiration for her character. He was the powerful CEO, and she was the humble single mom. But in those moments of observation, the titles began to melt away. He saw a strength in her that dwarfed the blustering power of the men in his boardroom. Her efficiency was more than just good work, it was a display of her innate kindness and sense of duty. She handled a colleague's mistake with grace, protecting them from undue blame while ensuring the problem was fixed. Every action she took was imbued with a quiet dignity. It was a heart-aching display of leadership, far more effective than any loud pronouncements or power plays he was used to seeing. Landon found himself intrigued, drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. His initial suspicion about the night of the gala was now coupled with a fascination for this woman. His destiny had saved him, and now it was pointing him in her direction, urging him to look closer. He was a man who solved puzzles for a living, and Hazel Baker was becoming the most compelling mystery he had ever encountered. The moment of clarity for Landon came on a Tuesday afternoon. He was walking past a conference room when he overheard voices. It was Mark Atherton, the celebrated hero, speaking to Hazel. His tone was condescending, dismissive, and utterly cruel. He was publicly dressing her down for a minor scheduling error that Landon knew for a fact was Mark's own fault. It was a blatant abuse of his newfound, unearned authority. He watched, unseen, as Mark humiliated her in front of 2 junior colleagues. He belittled her competence, subtly referencing his importance to the CEO and implying she was lucky to still have a job. It was a power play, a pathetic attempt to reinforce his lie by keeping the real hero small and insignificant. Landon felt a hot flash of anger. The injustice was palpable and infuriating. He was witnessing the rot in his own company firsthand. But it was Hazel's reaction that left him truly speechless. She didn't cower, nor did she lash out in anger. She stood there, absorbed the verbal blows with a quiet strength, and then responded with a grace that was simply breathtaking. She calmly acknowledged his feedback, corrected the schedule without assigning blame, and simply said, "I'll ensure it's taken care of, Mark." There was no bitterness in her voice, only a steely professional calm. It was in that moment that Landon saw the whole truth, clear as day. This was not the behavior of a guilty or incompetent person. This was the response of someone with an integrity so profound that it didn't need to stoop to the level of her tormentor. It was a deeply emotional and heart-aching display of character. Her kindness, her refusal to be drawn into the mud, was more powerful than any angry retort could have ever been. This scene was a bigger surprise to him than any market fluctuation. He had seen corporate backstabbing before, but he had rarely seen it met with such unwavering grace. It confirmed every suspicion he had about Mark and magnified his growing admiration for his assistant. She was living a reality where her greatest act of courage was a secret, and her reward was to be humiliated by the fraud who had stolen her glory. Landon walked away from that doorway a changed man. The puzzle was no longer about who saved his life. He felt he knew the answer in his soul. The question now was what he was going to do about it. His path to redemption was clear. He had to right this wrong. His first step would be to get closer to Hazel, to understand the woman who could face down such ugliness with such beautiful strength. Landon knew he couldn't just walk up to Hazel and ask, "By the way, did you save my life and let Mark Atherton take the credit?" The situation was too delicate, too fraught with power dynamics. He needed a different approach, a way to get to know her outside the rigid confines of the office. He was a CEO used to getting what he wanted, and right now, he wanted to understand the secret of his quiet assistant. So he did what he did best. He strategized. He arranged a private dinner at an elegant but discreet restaurant, using the pretense of discussing a new confidential project. It was a plausible excuse, a way to have a one-on-one conversation without raising suspicion. His true agenda, however, had nothing to do with business. He wanted to understand the woman who worked in his shadow, the woman who possessed such quiet strength. The invitation itself was a surprise for Hazel. She was used to being invisible, to managing his schedule, not being a part of it. A private dinner with the CEO was unheard of. For a moment, she was wary, wondering what she could have done wrong. But Landon's request was framed with a newfound respect she hadn't felt from him before, and her curiosity got the better of her. She agreed, her mind racing with possibilities. This dinner was a pivotal moment, a deliberate step off the beaten path for Landon. It was the first time he was actively trying to bridge the chasm between their two worlds. He was intrigued, captivated by the puzzle of her. He wanted to see beyond the efficient assistant and meet the single mom, the woman who responded to being humiliated with grace, the person he increasingly believed was his savior. For Landon, this wasn't just about satisfying his curiosity. It felt like a crucial step on a path that destiny had laid out for him. His near-death experience had been a wake-up call, forcing him to see the emptiness of his success-driven life. He felt a pull towards Hazel's authenticity, a stark contrast to the sycophants who usually surrounded him. Their dinner was the first move in what was becoming an unspoken love story. He went to that dinner not as a boss, but as a man searching for a truth that felt more important than any business deal. He wanted to hear her story from her own lips. He was ready to listen, truly listen, for the first time. He had a feeling that this conversation would be a turning point, a revelation that would confirm everything his heart was already telling him, a heart-aching moment that was long overdue. The dinner began with a little awkwardness, the familiar roles of CEO and assistant still clinging to them. But Landon gently steered the conversation away from business, asking about her life. At first, Hazel was guarded, her answers polite but generic. She was a master at keeping her personal secrets safe. But something in his genuine interest, the patient way he listened, slowly chipped away at her defenses. He learned about her son, the center of her universe. She spoke of her life as a single mom, not with a tone of complaint or self-pity, but with a simple, matter-of-fact strength. She described the challenge as tight budget, the juggling of schedules, the worry, but she always circled back to the joy her son brought her. Landon, a man who dealt with billions of dollars, was humbled by the richness of a life built on love, not money. Landon was deeply moved. This wasn't just a story, it was a testament to her incredible character. He was listening to the most emotional, heart-aching narrative he had ever encountered. He saw a woman who faced down daily struggles with an unwavering optimism that was both baffling and beautiful. The grace she showed when Mark humiliated her wasn't an on-off event, it was the very fabric of her being. Her profound kindness shone through in every story she told. She spoke of helping a neighbor, of volunteering at her son's school, of finding reasons to be grateful every single day. Landon felt a growing sense of shame for how he had overlooked her, for how he had been so blind to the magnificent human being managing his calendar. He was having dinner with a quiet giant, a hero in every sense of the word. This conversation was the plot twist in their personal story. It was no longer about a boss and an employee. It was about a man seeing, truly seeing, a woman for the first time and being completely in awe of what he found. The foundation of a love story was being laid, built on a bedrock of profound respect and deep emotional connection. He felt more for her in that 12-hour dinner than he had for anyone in years. He left the dinner that night with a renewed sense of purpose. He hadn't asked about the galley, he didn't need to. He knew, with every fiber of his being, that this woman was the one who had saved him. The inconsistencies in Mark's story, her quiet dignity, her immense strength, it all clicked into place. His gratitude finally had a face. Now his quest for redemption had a clear goal. He needed to find the proof and restore her honor. Landon's resolve after that dinner was absolute. The next morning, he bypassed his entire executive team and made a single direct request to the head of his corporate security. He wanted the complete, unedited security footage from the ballroom on the night of the gala. He explained it was for a private review of emergency protocols, a plausible excuse that masked his true, deeply personal mission. The request from the CEO was, of course, granted immediately. He locked himself in his office. The large monitor on his desk that usually displayed market data now queued up to show a dozen different camera angles of the event. His heart pounded as he fast-forwarded to the moment of his collapse. He watched the scene unfold in silence, seeing the panic, the chaos, the fear on the faces of people had known for years. He saw Mark Atherton standing several feet away, frozen like a deer in headlights. Then he saw her. From a corner of the room, he watched Hazel move with that impossible calm he now recognized. The footage was undeniable. He saw her push through the crowd, kneel beside him, and immediately begin chest compressions. He watched as she directed the stunned security guard, her movements efficient and sure. There was no hesitation. It was the most incredible display of courage he had ever witnessed. This was the moment she saves life. The undeniable truth hit him like a physical blow. It was all there, in high definition. He saw Mark Atherton slowly creep closer only after Hazel had stabilized the situation, positioning himself to look involved. Just as the paramedics began to arrive, the brazenness of the lie was shocking. The footage was the ultimate plot twist, the smoking gun that exposed the fraud and revealed the true hero. It was a silent movie that told the most emotional story. He rewound the footage and watched it again, this time with tears welling in his eyes. He was watching his quiet, humble assistant, the single mom he had barely noticed, single-handedly save his life while the man who took the credit did absolutely nothing. The secret was out, revealed not by a confession or an accusation, but by the cold, impartial eye of a security camera. The surprise left him breathless. Landon leaned back in his chair, a whirlwind of emotions washing over him. There was shock at the depth of Mark's deceit, but it was dwarfed by an overwhelming wave of admiration and gratitude for Hazel. He finally had the proof. His intuition had been right all along. His destiny was not just to be saved by this woman, but to be the one to finally give her the honor she so richly deserved. With the undeniable proof playing on a loop on his screen, Landon felt the full weight of the truth crash down on him. He was completely and utterly speechless. It was one thing to suspect, to feel it in his gut. It was another thing entirely to witness it. To see Hazel's calm heroism and Mark's cowardly deceit laid bare was an experience that fundamentally shook him to his core. He just sat there, replaying the moment she saves life, unable to look away. A profound sense of guilt washed over him. It was a heavy, suffocating feeling. Guilt for his blindness, for having overlooked this incredible woman for years. Guilt for allowing her to be humiliated by a fraud. Guilt for being so wrapped up in his own world that he had failed to see the gem in his own office. His quest for redemption was no longer just about exposing a lie, it was about atoning for his own ignorance. But layered over the guilt was a wave of the most profound admiration he had ever felt. Her quiet heroism, her sheer goodness was overwhelming. She had faced a life-or-death situation with courage, faced a lie with dignity, and faced disrespect with grace. The depth of her character was staggering. She was his assistant, a single mom fighting her own battles, and yet she possessed more integrity than anyone in his suit. It was a heart-aching revelation. This mix of emotions was incredibly potent. It was a cocktail of shock at the plot twist, shame for his part in it, and an awe that bordered on reverence. He felt a desperate need to make things right, to tear down the lie and lift her up. His world had been reordered. The things he used to value, power, influence, profit, suddenly seemed trivial compared to the simple, powerful kindness he had seen in her. The beginning of their love story was now cemented in this moment of intense emotional clarity. His feelings for her went far beyond simple gratitude. It was a deep, soul-stirring respect for who she was at her core. He wasn't just falling for the woman who saved him, he was falling for her strength, her humility, her unwavering moral compass. He saw his future, and he knew he wanted her to be at the center of it. He finally turned off the monitor, the images seared into his memory. His course was set. He was the CEO, a man of power and influence. For years, he had used that power for corporate gain. Now, he would wield it for justice. He knew what he had to do. The next board meeting was in 2 days, and it was going to be an event that no one would ever forget. A great surprise was in store for everyone. As the initial shock subsided, a new, powerful realization settled over Landon. For his entire career as a CEO, he had been obsessed with asset stock value, real estate, intellectual property, market share. He was a master at identifying and acquiring value. But as he sat there, thinking about the security footage, he understood that he had been looking in all the wrong places. The spreadsheet of his life had been missing the most important column. He realized with a clarity that was almost spiritual that the most valuable asset he had ever encountered was not in his company, but in his assistant. It was the authentic, unshakable character of Hazel Baker. Her integrity, her kindness, her quiet strength. These were assets that couldn't be quantified on a balance sheet, but they were more precious than anything he owned. They were the true measure of wealth. This epiphany was the final critical piece of his transformation. His near-death experience had cracked his old self open, but it was the revelation of Hazel's quiet heroism that rebuilt him into something new. He saw how hollow his pursuit of power had been when compared to the simple, profound act of a good person doing the right thing for no other reason than it was the right thing to do. It was a deeply heartaching moment of self-awareness. The burgeoning love story in his heart was now intertwined with this new philosophy. He didn't just want to be with Hazel, he wanted to be like her. He wanted to build his life and his company on the principles she embodied. She was his moral compass, the true north he hadn't known he was searching for. This felt like his true destiny, not just to lead a company, but to lead it with a newfound sense of purpose and integrity. He thought of her struggles as a single mom, the quiet dignity with which she carried herself even when being humiliated. She wasn't just a hero because she saves life in a crisis. She was a hero every single day in the small, unseen battles she fought with grace and optimism. She was a woman of immense value whom the world and he himself had completely underestimated. What a surprise she turned out to be. With this newfound perspective, his plan for the board meeting solidified. It would not be an act of revenge against Mark. It would be a celebration of true value. It would be his first act as a new kind of leader, a leader who understood that a company's greatest strength isn't its bottom line, but the character of its people. His quest for redemption was now a mission to redefine success itself, all inspired by his remarkable assistant. The day of the board meeting arrived. The atmosphere was formal, tense, filled with the most powerful people in the company. Mark Atherton was there, looking smug and confident in his role as the CEO's right-hand man and savior. Hazel was also there, standing quietly by the wall, ready to take notes, completely unaware of the plot twist that was about to unfold. She was just doing her job as an assistant. Landon began the meeting, his voice calm but carrying a new weight. He spoke of his recovery, of gratitude, and of the values of the company. Then, he turned his gaze directly to Mark. "We have a hero among us," Landon said, and Mark smiled, ready to receive another round of praise. But Landon continued, his voice dropping, "The hero is not you, Mark." The room fell silent. He then turned to the main screen and played the security footage for everyone to see. The truth played out in stark, silent black and white. The entire board watched as Hazel saves life with heroic calm, and as Mark cowered, only to step in at the end. The room was filled with gasps. Mark's face went from smug to pale to ashen. He was exposed, humiliated in front of the very people he had sought to impress. When the footage ended, you could hear a pin drop. The surprise was total and devastating. Landon then turned to Hazel, who was standing by the wall, her face a mask of shock. "The true hero," he announced, his voice filled with an emotional, heart-aching sincerity, "is Hazel Baker." He spoke of her courage, her humility, and her integrity. He publicly honored her, not just for saving his life, but for being a woman of incredible character. He exposed the secret of her quiet heroism for the entire world to see. "This is the kind of integrity our company has been lacking," Landon declared, his voice ringing with conviction. "This is the bedrock upon which I will build my future and this company's future." He looked directly at Hazel, his gaze softening. Her kindness, her strength, that is the true asset. This public act was his ultimate redemption, righting the wrong in the most dramatic way possible. Hazel was completely, utterly speechless. She stared at Landon, tears streaming down her face, a mix of shock, vindication, and a dawning beautiful hope. It was the climax of a story she never thought would be told. In that moment, the CEO and the single mom were just two people, their destiny finally and publicly intertwined. The unspoken love story was now a promise, declared before the world, leaving everyone in the room breathless. And so, a story that began with ignorance and injustice ends with redemption and a love, built on the strongest foundation of all character. What a journey for Landon and Hazel, from a powerful CEO who was blind to the world around him, to a leader who finally understands that true value isn't measured in dollars, but in kindness. And for Hazel, the quiet single mom and assistant, her silent strength was finally seen, honored, and celebrated, leaving everyone, especially her, speechless. It's a powerful reminder that heroism often comes from the quietest places, and that destiny has a way of revealing the truth. We are so glad you joined us for this emotional and heartaching story. Now we want to hear from you. What part of this story impacted you the most? Was it Hazel's quiet heroism when she saves life, or the moment Landon finally uncovered the secret? Did you expect a different ending, or did you love the final plot twist where Hazel was finally honored? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a like to show your support. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. We have plenty of other videos for you to watch, so feel free to explore our library. And finally, if you know someone who needs a reminder that kindness and integrity always win, please share this video with them. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.